go.
CJ Moore, columnist, covers college basketball and more for theathletic.com, joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul. David Smoke and CJ, good to have you. Been a while, probably too long. I should have reached out to you earlier. How would you describe the Big 12 with now 3 games left to play overall with the additions and where Houston is at the top of the national rankings?
Well, I think first thing is I think what Houston's been able to do in the first year being in this league is pretty incredible. I mean, I think we all who cover the sport, coaches too, probably thought, there'd be the first year might be kind of tough for them, thought they'd maybe compete for the title here, but man, they're in such a great spot with just a few games left, and I think the league is just to sum up the rest of it, just crowded. Like, you look at a team like Kansas State, who's 7-8 in the league, and they're just a couple games back of Kansas, and who's safely in the field. And K-State's probably not in the field, but you can only get so many teams in the NCAA tournament from the Big 12. So I think it's just been a lot of parity in the league this year. The middle is probably about as big as ever, and I think the middle is always pretty big in this league. So I'm not sure there's like a national title contender. I think Houston on paper, or at least in the metrics, looks like that, and I wouldn't be shocked if they win a title, but I'd be a little surprised.
CJ, what are your thoughts on the kerfuffle in Lubbock last night?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get fans throwing stuff onto a court, not a great look. I haven't seen the play that made them angry. I was at the Kansas game last night, but did see on Twitter that it happened and saw, Grant take the mic. But that's just, stuff like that. I just hope, you wish it wouldn't happen in college basketball. There's never a reason any fan at any sporting event should throw something onto the court or playing surface. That just can't happen. So do better, Texas Tech fans.
CJ, what was that like to watch BYU roll into Lawrence and get a massive win for their program first year in the league? And for KU, just fueling the doubts about kind of where this team is. Where is this team right now, in your opinion, after last night?
Yeah, it's always shocking to see somebody win at Allen Fieldhouse. It's not Kansas just because it doesn't happen very often. But KU's in such a vulnerable spot right now with Kevin McCullough being out, and they build a roster that just can't really sustain an injury to any of their starters. The bench just isn't as good as you would typically think a team program like Kansas would have. So Kevin McCullough's arguably been their best player this year. So you take anybody's best player off the roster, it's tough. And I thought BYU had a really, really smart game plan, or at least playing in the second half. Kansas was switching everything. They really were seeking out Hunter Dickinson and kind of picking on him. And I turned with my wife with maybe like 5 minutes ago, and I was like, BYU's going to win this game. And you could just feel it that Kansas was struggling to score so much. You look today, Kansas is 50th in adjusted offense at Ken Pom. You rarely see a Bill Self team that low. And he went out and built this team kind of for offense, getting Hunter Dickinson. So I think, from a Kansas regard, as coming into the season, preseason number 1, I think it's been a little disappointing. But here, they're probably worst case like a 4 seed. That's the worst Bill Self's ever done. And when you kind of pull back and look big picture, you appreciate his consistency, because it's hard to be that consistent every year. But this has definitely been a down year for Kansas.
Whether it's 8 or 9 or how many teams get in the tournament from the Big 12, obviously there's, like we saw all of a sudden what Texas flexed their muscles last night in Lubbock. Baylor at times looks dangerous, CJ, but they also look like they can't get out of their own way. How would you describe what Scott Drew and Baylor have?
Yeah, I think they're just that's youth, right? Like that's the result of having kind of a younger team. To me, like Baylor, I think the thing that differentiates them from other teams is he's messy, and he is there. I think they're trying to play through him more recently, and when he's really good, like I think they're pretty good. The guards are obviously very important as well, but Scott's been kind of trying to figure out how to do it defensively, mixing in zones and stuff like that. I definitely think they're a team that has the talent to get hot in March and potentially go on a run. But, it's one of those teams that could also lose here early. I think there's a lot of teams like that in the Big 12. Texas Tech, you mentioned them. They've had their own health problems before in Washington. And when he's out, they're not nearly the same. And that kind of explains why they got, thumped last night by Texas. He was out last night.
What do you think of the teams that are on the bubble in the Big 12? Like, I guess it would really only be Kansas State right now and perhaps Texas. Do you think Kansas State can clear the bar over these next few games and get themselves back into the tournament where a couple weeks ago you might have said they're kind of playing their way out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think really, I'm definitely not don't consider myself a bracketologist and hate looking at that stuff. But, I talk about college basketball all the time, so I kind of have an understanding of where they are. And I think they'd have to probably win 2 of their last 3 games and then, win some games in the Big 12 tournament. And the schedule's not too favorable. They're at Cincinnati, at Kansas, and home against Iowa State. So you win 2 of those games. That'd be pretty impressive. That gets you to 500 in the league. Then I think they're in the conversation.
Yeah, and man, isn't that stat about Jerome Tang and overtime at K-State over the last couple of years just insane?
Yeah, it is. I mean, just the fact they've had so many overtime games is just kind of crazy. But just to win them all, I don't know. I'm sure there's an element of luck to it, but I also think there's probably some coaching and there's a ability to kind of get your guys to calm down and breathe and, be able to perform in that moment. But there's a skill to that as well. But, we'll see how long he keeps this thing going, but it's pretty incredible to have as many games in overtime as they had and to win them all.
There is sometimes you can look at about this time of the year and even earlier, but people overreact. But a team that is the alpha, the one who is the best, and you could tell Baylor and obviously Gonzaga had their collision course in 21, and then KU the next year. And there's been the Jay Wright Villanova. There's been those. Do you see one of those this year in college basketball?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like Purdue and Connecticut are those 2 teams to me, and you never know with the NCAA tournament because crazy things can happen, and just in 40 minutes it's easy for a team to pull an upset, and we've seen the best team does not always make it. But those to me feel like the 2 best teams, and if we have like a Baylor Gonzaga type title game to where those were the best 2 teams we thought going into the bracket, and those are the best 2 that then end up at the end, it'd be Purdue and Connecticut for me. I think based on their resumes, based on watching them on TV, watching them in person, I've seen both of them play multiple times in person now. They feel like they're on another level than everybody else.
CJ, you mentioned that, but there are, teams, like Arizona and Houston that are also maybe a little bit more. Last year was, of course, the weirdest Final Four we ever had. And, of course, Connecticut was kind of masquerading as a lower seed because of what happened to them in January last year. But this year, does it feel like this could be one of those years that's maybe regresses back to the mean of there will be more higher seeded teams in there because there's a bit of a separation between the 4 teams we've talked about and maybe the level right below?
I'm not sure because I do think Purdue and Connecticut are on another level, but I think because of the COVID year and so much movement in college basketball and so many older guys playing, you look at the stat that the number of top 10 teams that get upset when they're on the road against unranked teams is unlike anything we've ever seen in the sport, right? So that fact alone, I think you could see kind of some crazy stuff in the state tournament, and maybe you see another FAU type team going to run or San Diego State type team. Not saying it's those particular teams, but it could be like FAU has such a strange year. I was just down there, and we'll have a story on those guys pretty soon. But they've got some awesome wins. They beat Arizona this year. They played Illinois really close. they've got some great wins, but then they've got some stinkers as well, and they'll kind of be a lower seed. So that's a team on any given night that could get hot from three and get you. So I'm not sure we won't have like some surprises in the Final Four. I can't definitively say there's a separation of like 8 or 9 teams. I do think there's probably a drop off after like the top maybe 10 or so, but there's the distance between 10 and the 25 best team. I don't think is a huge distance.
CJ, one of the things that I've always respected, and really when you caught my attention, was the columns, the articles, the features of coaches or on players. And I like at the top of your Twitter feed, it's the one about Indiana State coach Josh Schertz and what you went to go write about, and then what you found out about his story. Do you have one this year, and is that the one that was up until now your favorite story that you've written?
Yeah, I think it is. It's the most incredible like coach's tale, coach's journey I've ever come across, and that'd be the one this year for sure. I'm not sure I'll ever tell another story like it. Like, he was a tennis phenom as a kid, and quit tennis, and his dad kicked him out of the house, and he was homeless for a little while. That's just kind of the quick Spark Notes version of it. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. And here, I think real soon he'll be probably coach at either a high major or close to a high major. I think he's going to get he's going to be one of the hot names on the coaching carousel this March and April. Thank you very much, man. Good stuff as always. CJ Moore, follow him. Go, if you're not a subscriber of theathletic.com, if you want to be, I'm going to put the link to his article up. And if you're a subscriber, obviously, then you can read it with CJ Moore from theathletic.com. Let's do